Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give more speaking feedback. This time we're going to look at Phung's test. So, enjoy. Good afternoon, my name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Hello, my full name is Phung.
And not quite sure if he's saying first or full name here, but remember this part of the test isn't tested, so when they ask for your name, we're just looking for your name and something for you, the way that we can call you. So you're not judged on this. What should I call you?
You can call me Phung for short.
And just noticing there is a bit of latency, there's a delay between the time that I ask the question and the time that the candidate gives the answer. Now, I don't know if this is an internet problem or if it's just the candidate taking some time to think, but I think it's probably an internet problem. Reminder to all candidates, you have to make sure that your internet connection works, that it's reliable, that it's stable. I keep saying this, but okay. Thank you, Fong. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from Hanoi, Vietnam, in Hanoi.
So I'm from Hanoi in Vietnam, and then the candidate, it seems, there's not intonation there that suggests that he's finished giving the answer. So that's why I sit in silence, waiting to see if he will continue. But it just feels a little bit uncomfortable. It's a bit awkward. I'm from Hanoi in Vietnam, and it's like, if you're going to take the IELTS test, of course, I don't think it's a good idea for candidates to memorize answers, but you should be very well prepared for questions like where are you from, or do you work or do you study? These questions you really, really have to be very prepared for. And the candidate seems almost like shocked or surprised that I asked him where he was from.
Which is the capital city of Vietnam.
I get a capital city. Sometimes people in East Asia or Southeast Asia have a problem with this final consonants capital, this dark L capital. And do you like this place?
Yes, this is where I was.
There seems to be a lack of energy, a lack of enthusiasm from the candidate. This could be for a number of reasons. Maybe the candidate is nervous, maybe the candidate is tired, or maybe the candidate is a little bit unsure of his English. There are many reasons why that can happen, but it does put a strain on the listener when a lot of the answers have a sound to it. It sounds like I'm laughing or I'm making a joke or I'm making fun of the candidate. I'm not. You can hear that for yourself. I'm just trying to show you the types of things that can put a strain on the listener. And just listen again.
It's the capital city of Vietnam.
And do you like this place?
Yes.
So you don't hear it much, but there's a lot of this type of stuff, and it just feels a little negative.
This is where I was born and raised.
Cool, born and raised, fine. Sounds like memorized language, but it's used effectively here. This is where I was born and raised, great.
So it's my hometown, so yeah.
And notice again this cadency, there's not the language coming out naturally, it's like there's a strain, so it sounds like almost like the candidate is fighting with his language. This can happen again for a number of reasons. It might be late in the day, but you really want to make sure that the basic things like your energy is up, that you're enthusiastic, that that we can hear your voice so that it doesn't sound strained. This type of stuff does put a strain on the listener.
I never.
And is your hometown popular with tourists?
Yes, so Hanoi is one of the most popular city in Vietnam for
So candidate relies on slow speech, but okay, he's answering the question.
tourism. So actually, is maybe is the number one. Is the number one in.
So candidate breaking down, can't create a flow of speech, really has to repeat or hesitate to continue speaking at length.
Vietnam that many tourists come to when they went to Vietnam.
And what many tourists come to when they went to Vietnam. I don't know why pastime here. Usually it's the place where many tourists go to when they come to Vietnam. I don't know why went to. What do tourists do when they go to Hanoi?
Hanoi has a rich history of culture, so mostly they just some come to some landmarks about
Come to some lemas? I didn't quite understand that lemas. Not sure what you said there.
to learn more about the history and the food is also the also the most popular factor.
So there are a number of things here, and the internet connection really isn't helping the candidate either, because this is also breaking down his speech, which again is a disappointment.
One of the most popular factor for tourism.
Okay, one of the most popular factor instead of factors for tourism. So there are basic, language mistakes in there as well, but the fluency and the pronunciation are the things that are really noticeable in part one. Okay, let's move on now and talk about sports. And this is just the first topic and games. What's your favorite sport?
Mm, Definitely football. I watched it a lot with my father growing up, and one of my favorite football club is Manchester United.
One of my favorite football club. Again, with this one of, we use plural. One of my favorite football clubs, one of my favorite pieces of advice, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite, and so on. So one of my favorite usually is used with a plural noun. This is, I think, the third time now we've had a mistake with like singular noun versus plural noun.
And
And again, we get this sound, which is, yeah, frustrating.
also my
And when I say frustrating, I don't mean frustrating for me. I don't mean that I feel frustrated now when I'm listening to it, but I have to try to think like, what would a reasonable person think of this? What would a normal, like, regular person, just how would they react to it? And I would say that that noise puts a strain on the listener.
hero was Cristiano Ronaldo, and he also one of the legend of the
One of the legend, again, it should be one of the legends.
club.
And do you play any sports?
Not really, because I'm not participate in.
I'm not participate. Again, this is very basic grammar, right? I'm not plus adjective, noun, or location, right? I'm not happy. I'm not a teacher. I'm not at home. With verbs, we use I don't. I don't participate. I don't like. I don't run, for example. This is present simple grammar. So yeah, it's disappointing that the basic structure of the grammar is there. The candidate is speaking in sentences, and the word order is mostly in the right way. But the candidate has no control over normal things like present simple or singular and plural.
any sport club or something like that. I just mostly work out every day.
And what kind of games did you play with your friends when you were younger?
Mm,
I like this workout. I mostly work out every day.
Some when I was still at school,
Cool pastime. When I was still at school, we get a bit of pastime.
we mostly just play some
It's just play, and this is something I notice also with lower level learners. They use it is just or it is. What do you do in your free time? It is play tennis. What did you do last weekend? It is buy clothes. They often use this because they can't use past simple, perhaps like I played tennis or I bought clothes or something like this. It is just plus the verb. It's a yeah. Sorry, I'm very negative again. I am very, very sorry.
mobile games này, game for
One of the reasons I'm being negative is because the candidate said that he was hoping to get a band 7. And so once the candidate says that I'm hoping to get a band 7, I really feel like I have to be, I have to pay attention to those really critical problems, those things that stop you, that will really, really stop you from getting there. And this sound and also these very basic grammar mistakes, already I can say the candidate is not close to a band 7, unfortunately. Speaks more like an intermediate. I would say the candidate, just from this so far, is 2 years of serious studying away from a band 7. But we'll see.
fighting games or adventurous game.
Adventurous games, but adventure games, maybe.
Yes.
And again, the turn doesn't end naturally. It ends with a adventurous games, maybe. Yes. Okay, let's talk about let's
Something
talk and then the candidate starts speaking after ending it. So one bit of advice for candidates: once the examiner has started speaking and once the examiner has started moving on to the next question, please don't interrupt the examiner by finishing your turn, right? The examiner will give you enough time to finish your turn, but if you don't if you leave a long pause and you don't manage to finish your turn, but you leave a long pause, the examiner will move on. And please don't interrupt the examiner by trying to finish your turn. The examiner has time limit. The examiner has a number of questions they need to get through. So yeah, keep that in mind.
games that kids always play.
Let's talk about laughing now. What kind of things usually make you laugh?
Maybe some random jokes that my friends just spontaneously talk about. And
So he can find that grammar good that they spontaneously talk about. So you can almost see that the candidate is really trying to think, like, maybe in the candidate's head it's like, okay, spontaneous is an adjective, spontaneously is an adverb, okay, adverbs of manner describe verbs, so that they spontaneously talk about, so demonstrating some cognitive awareness of grammar. But the price that he pays for this little bit of accuracy is again a big breakdown in fluency.
it's not really had to be something
Again, it is not really have to be. It is not really have to be. It doesn't really have to be. This is present simple, and now we've had 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 mistakes with present simple already. It's, yeah, critical.
special or it's just random things. Maybe
Again, it is just random things. So when candidates rely on this it is and it was too much, it shows to me a lack of, a lack of grammatical ability.
a comedy I watched randomly online. Or, yeah,
I watch randomly online. The candidate does show flashes of good language. It's just not sustained. Bits and pieces are nice, like spontaneously talk about, or I watch films, comedies randomly. There are good flashes of language, but the candidate can't sustain it.
it's all kinds of things.
Do you like, again, the candidate is speaking over the examiner? I know this is partly an internet problem, that we are speaking at different times because the candidate's internet connection is poor. But again, please don't interrupt the examiner. Telling jokes. I don't mind if you do it to me, absolutely fine. I don't care. But don't do it in the real exam.
Yes, I love to be able to make people laugh.
This is good, right? I love to be able to make people laugh. This is quite a complex. Love plus infinitive, to be able plus infinitive, to make people plus bare infinitive laugh. I love to be able to make people laugh. So that's like more indicative of like B2C1 grammar, that stacking of infinitives. It's really, really complex stuff. And it's great. It's just very rare.
And when I'm at work, I try
Cool. When I'm at work, good.
to tell some jokes.
try to tell some jokes. So again, we get the infinitive, and we get tell some jokes, which again is a nice collocation for
to
vocab.
my college.
Not college, but colleagues. College is an institute of further education, um, like a university, kind of. But colleagues are the people you work with, your co-workers, with a colleagues.
And kind of feel happy when they laugh.
Cool, kinda feel happy. I like this colloquial kinda feel happy. This is nice.
Because of my jokes.
Jokes sounds a bit like jobs here, right? Candidate's phonological range with consonants is a little bit weak. Just tell me, do you hear jokes or jobs?
Because of my jokes.
Because of my jokes. Almost like jokes. So candidate quite a few times has mixed up the consonants. Okay, thank you. All right, so it's going to be quite long, but feedback on part one. Candidates started off very, very weakly, almost confused by the questions like where am I from, and had real difficulty answering those questions. Candidate relied on slow speech but was able to develop. The candidate does try to give some extra details and shows flashes of really good grammar and some decent vocab, some suitable vocab. However, there are so many problems with grammatical accuracy that we don't get present simple. We don't really, there was like past simple instead of present time was used. The pronunciation things that I've mentioned and the fluency issues, they are the most noticeable things from part one. But looking at part two, what does the candidate need to do? Needs to describe a person who is often in the news. So there's no past time, like I think it's always good when part two has a pastime thing and they ask you to tell a story, because you can really learn that skill of telling a story and using adverbs and things like this, using past tenses and reported speech and past modals. This one is a present time, so describe a person who is often in the news. In terms of vocab, what kind of character this person has, to me that stands out as a place to activate a lot of vocab, open-minded, emotionally stable, or well balanced, or ambitious, or conscientious. There's a lot of words that could be activated when we talk about a person's character. But let's see how the candidate manages this. I'd like you to describe a personal preparation time. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about one of the most
Okay, we get talk about. Don't get that T at the end. Again, there are lots of L1 users who speak like that.
prominent figures.
Cool. Prominent figures. That's really, really, really good vocab.
That I often see on the news or some.
Still, the candidate speech is slow, and you're just hoping, you're just thinking, come on, get on with it. Let's go. And again, I don't mean me. I'm just saying that the speed of that speech provokes that reaction that, a lot of people will think, yeah, let's get to it now.
Some TV or on TV. That is he's a comedian.
Cool, good vocab. He's a comedian.
And his name is Nguyễn Trấn Thành.
Again, it doesn't sound like his name is. It sounds like his name in. I know what he means, but still, there are small things like this that just get it right. His name is.
He always he's because he.
Again, the candidate's just not sure. He always, because he is. Just candidate can't settle on a simple construction and stick with it. The candidate always seems very often like the candidate is always between two or three ways of expressing the same idea.
He always he's because he is a comedian, so
And that puts a strain on the listener, right? When he is because he or what he because that type of stuff really does put a strain on the listener. Sorry, I've repeated that term many times. A strain on the listener.
he's very funny and when he
He's very funny. Funny. Have a bit of a Vietnamese accent there, but that's okay. It's perfectly fine to speak with a Vietnamese accent. Um,
uh, appear on
and again, just to appear on, there's no obvious subject there, and if the subject is he, it should be he appears with an S. So again, present simple,
TV
but to get that nice collocation, appear on TV. Good.
or, or an interview, he always telling
And now we're just like an interviewee always telling. I don't know. That's just a collection of words, not grammatically
he
connected.
always telling jokes and
He always telling jokes instead of he is always telling jokes. So candidate can't use present continuous here.
makes people laugh. When I'm
Then we get the S makes people laugh.
when I feeling down or kind of stressed, I always turn
And again, when I kind of feel me down, kind of feel stressed, again, candidate can't pick one simple way of speaking and use that construction. Again, the candidate is fighting over many different possible constructions and doesn't know which one to choose.
to his he turn to his performance
Performance?
on YouTube
Again, just repetition, repetition,
to limit myself up and
and limits to the left. Again, in terms of pronunciation, no, not sure what he says there.
to on YouTube to limit myself up and
Limits to del af.
mm, there's he
Again, I feel like I'm being very negative. Again, I am very, very sorry, right? This is nothing against the candidate. The candidate is a really lovely guy. I enjoyed speaking to him. I don't like the football team Manchester United, but apart from this, he's a lovely guy, a nice person. My criticism here is just of the language, and especially because the candidate says he's hoping to get a band 7, I feel like, I have to be critical here. I really wouldn't want this candidate to spend money on the IELTS test thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to get a 7. I think it is important for the candidate to know that he's not close to the 7 right now. Sorry.
and he also a film producer. He also a film producer
Again, he also a film, missing this verb to be. He is also a film producer. Yeah.
and mm, he very talented.
And there's not really much cohesion. There's not many like linking words or anything. It's just sentence after sentence, like stacked sentences without words like and, but, so, because, and also, and in addition to that, and another thing. We don't get any of these discourse markers.
But there also there also many people like him, and also a lot of people don't like him because he has some controversy
Controversy, good. Okay, thank you.
remarks.
So, thoughts on part two. Again, there are flashes of nice bits of language like controversy, comedian, film producer. All of that stuff is good, but it's quite rare and it's just vocab. In terms of the fluency, it's just, yeah, it's poor. In terms of the grammar, again, we just don't get the most basic things right. The verb to be, present simple. There's no, we don't get like 3 sentences back to back without a mistake. That just doesn't happen with this candidate. And in terms of pronunciation, again, there's a lack of intonation, a lack of enthusiasm. Candidate seems like he's just bored and doesn't want to be there, which again can happen for a number of reasons. Vocab is okay. Let's see part three. I don't think we will listen to all of part three because I don't want to become I feel like I could probably mark this test right now. In fact, I know I could mark this test right now. I don't need to listen to part three to understand the candidate's performance, but we'll listen just to maybe two or three questions in part three, and I'll give some feedback, and then we'll get into marks. All right, so you've been talking about a person in the news. Let's talk about the news in general now. What kinds of people are usually in the news in your country?
Mm, maybe when I only think of
It may be when I only think about
politicians
politicians. Maybe when I only think about politicians. It's a strange way of answering.
or actors or actresses, they may be the most important, the most they always they appear a lot on news and TV.
So yeah, there's no development of the answer here. He's just said actors, actresses, politicians, but there's no extension. And why are so many people interested in the lives of celebrities like actors and actresses?
I think the curious, they just
Curious is a good bit of language. Again, the candidate's vocabulary really is quite strong.
curious about what famous people do and uh,
But can you dig deeper, right? They're famous, they're curious about what famous people do. Can you dig deeper? Can you explain why that's the case? Or could you explain maybe what kind of people? Is it young people? Is it older people? Is it usually males? Is it usually females? Is it all people? Maybe you can blame, I don't know, social media, or you can blame, I don't know, TV or something for this, but there should be some explanation of why people are curious about these people's lives.
they would do and on their daily life.
And do most people get their news in your country from TV or newspapers or online?
Yeah, there is not a social media, and people often see the new on
People often seeing the new. Yeah, so watch the news maybe instead of seeing the new.
social media like Facebook or TikTok or some digital
And again, it takes the candidate a long time to get his idea out there.
digital news.
And do you think this is a good place to get news? Places. Okay, I think this will be the last question. Like TikTok or Facebook or other social media.
Yes, I think that to get up to date to the latest
To get up to date.
news, then
Maybe stay up to date is better, but yeah.
they can go to those social media and get the news from it.
Again, it's just underdeveloped, right? Yeah, they can stay up to date. They can go to social media and get the news from it, but that's not a full answer. Part three is supposed to be a discussion, quite an in-depth discussion about some topics that are relevant in 2024, and we don't get that discussion. We get a direct answer, but there's no willingness to speak at length. But I think I will hold it there, and I think I will go into marks. Don't think it's a very difficult one to mark for. I think I give for this. So your speech is incredibly slow. You have to repeat a lot of your ideas and words. There are frequent pauses which put a strain on the listener, and only basic connectives are used. The main thing, of course, is that slow speech and the repetition of words. It takes you such a long time to say something simple. If even if you want to say something like "I like apples," what fruit do you like? I like apples. Your answer is usually something, well, when maybe I I like apples. And again, please don't think that this is like a joke making fun. This is how I speak when I'm at A2 in a language. This is how I speak a language too, because I don't know the language very well. It takes me a while to access the correct words and to produce answers. So, when I'm at a low level in a language, and there are many languages where I'm at a very low level, this is how I speak. Lexical resource is strong. The candidate does have 6 here for lexical resource. So you show an awareness of quite high level vocabulary about on a variety of topics. The lack of development stops you from getting a higher mark. So, if you had better fluency, if you could go into topics in greater detail, this would allow you to activate even more vocab. At the moment, it's just like, okay, I see like a controversial figure, or I see appear in the news, appear on TV, or I see like to get up to date, and it's like, oh, this is good vocab, but there's just not enough of it. So I can award the 6 for that. Grammatical range and accuracy, again, I'm going to go with 4. So almost all sentences have some error. Sometimes these block the listener's understanding. I won't add more than that. If almost all of your sentences have errors, even with the most basic grammar, then yeah, that's the score you can expect. And pronunciation, I will say 5, because I think in general, it's not too difficult to understand what you're saying. Though your speech is relatively clear, there are some minor issues, especially with consonants, especially the consonants that come at the end of words. But I don't think this is a critical thing. Slow speech also affects your sentence stress. So we don't get things like sentence stress and good intonation and things like this in your speech. And that's in part because you're speaking so slowly, because you're taking so much time to access language. We don't hear this intonation. But in general, it's easy enough to understand, but there are some words and some sentences where it's like, I just don't know what you're saying. So in total here, we have 4, 4, 5, and 6, or 4, 6, 4, and 5. So that leads to a score of 4.5. And so this puts the candidate at B1 intermediate. I think if I was testing this candidate, not for IELTS, if I was giving the candidate like a placement test to put in a group, I would probably put this candidate in a pre-intermediate group, because I think the fluency level is so low that the candidate needs to build confidence with very familiar subjects. And I'm sure if the candidate was speaking about very familiar subjects, the candidate would have more confidence, and that confidence would improve the candidate's fluency. So I would probably put the candidate in an A2 group. But according to the IELTS scores, it's quite difficult to get an A2. According to the IELTS scores, he's just in there, like the middle of B1. Middle of intermediate. Areas of development. I will only say that I think you should forget about IELTS for now and focus on improving your general English. I will say that I think in your head, I think you know a lot of English. I think you'll probably do well in something like a listening test. I think another Another thing you could try is learning how to be a better communicator in your own language. So, I would advise this candidate to do things like, I don't know, public speaking or something like this, learning about what it means to deliver words with effect, when we should have pauses, which words we should stress, things like this, the importance of body language, the importance of having clear speech so that everyone can hear you, knowing what effect you have on a listener, knowing what like frustrates listeners and what excites listeners. So I think the candidate does lack, the most basic communication skills, at least in English. And I think probably the candidate, if the candidate could improve his communication skills in his own language, he might actually improve his speaking skills in English too. Because I think probably in his head the candidate knows a lot of English. But I do feel a little bit bad for being so negative about this. Candidate mentioned he wanted a band 7, and my advice is forget about IELTS for now. Enjoy the process of learning English and focus on your communication skills, because we're not close to getting the band 7, at least yet. A couple of years, who knows? Who knows? All right, so I'll leave that there. I hope you found this breakdown of this candidate's speaking test useful. Again, please don't think that I'm making fun of the candidate or making fun of the candidate's English. I'm only trying to say what an examiner sees or would see in this candidate's speech, and why an examiner might give this candidate a score of 4.5 in the IELTS speaking test. And that's it. That's all I'm trying to do. But anyway, if you would like your own IELTS free practice speaking test with this kind of brutal, cruel sometimes feedback, or if you would like me to check your IELTS writing, you can request this in my on my Telegram channel. A link to the Telegram channel is given below. Also, other ways to contact me are given below. Some people write and say, I don't have Telegram, how can I contact you? Well, in every video I put my contact information. I'm sure you can find it if you need it. But anyway, I'll leave it there for now. Have a wonderful evening and see you all again very soon. Bye bye.